Is leaky gut normal? And if so, when does it become abnormal and pathogenic? What are the triggers that cause leaky gut? Knowing the answers to these questions will help you to get laser targeted to fix the gut and save time and money by avoiding costly mistakes. Welcome to the Ask Dr. Khan Show, where you learn to master your health. I'm Dr. Peter Khan, board-certified chiropractic neurologist and functional medicine doc. Now, in this interview with my friend and colleague, Dr. John Dempster, you will learn why leaky gut is normal at different times in your life and when leaky gut becomes a problem, and diet and lifestyle factors that are well within your control that can actually trigger leaky gut. You'll also learn about food sensitivity, especially gluten, lectin, and gluten cross reactions. And you'll learn about the value of food sensitivity tests, when to run it, and when to hold off. Now, these are important questions that can help you to do the right things from the get-go and get results. Now, this is part one of a three-part series on leaky gut. Let's dive right in and help you master leaky gut.
This is the Gut Reset Summit, so there's nothing more pertinent to our gut than what's going on inside of our intestines. So tell me, what is this thing called leaky gut? We hear a lot about this. I think there's a lot of myths about it out there. There's all sorts of facts and truths that we're going to expose today too, but I want you to take it away. Tell the listeners today what's going on with leaky gut.
Right. Now, thank you for having me talk about this topic. This is something that I've been working with our clients for a long time. I say close to, approaching 2 decades. And leaky gut is a layman's term. The scientific term for this is called intestinal permeability. And what that implies is that your intestinal tract can be permeable, meaning certain things are able to get through the intestinal tract and get absorbed, and other things like poop and waste product are kept inside of the tube called your digestive tract so that you eliminate it from the other end. Now, know that intestinal permeability or leaky gut is actually something that's part of normal. And what I mean by that is we transiently go in and out of leaky gut. It's not something that you have and then you have it and then you take some supplements as if you duct taped it and you won't have it for the rest of your life. It's actually a transient state that we can go in and out of. The problem with leaky gut is when it happens on a more regular basis, on a more chronic basis. This is the reason why in the scientific literature, another term that it's leaky gut is called intestinal hyperpermeability. Rather than just permeability, it's too permeable, right? So I want to make sure that the audience know that leaky gut is something that's part of normal. It goes in and out transiently. For example, if you had a night of poor sleep, you might have leaky gut just from that. But that doesn't mean it stays that way, because as soon as you get proper sleep and leaky gut kind of just gets better. And then next time you eat something really bad, fried food or whatever, you might have leaky gut from that. And then the next day you eat some vegetable and then you don't have leaky gut. So it can kind of come in and out. In fact, as babies, infants, they're born with leaky gut. And they actually have leaky gut up to about 1.5 years, 2 years of age until the gut becomes more less permeable and become more permanently sealed, but even though you can still have transient problems. And the reason why babies are born with leaky gut is that so that they can easily absorb the immunoglobulins and immune factors given by their mother through the breast milk. This is how they build immunity. So again, leaky gut is part of normal, but definitely when it becomes chronic, when it becomes hyperpermeable, it can lead to a whole host of health problems and conditions and symptoms that can really be the root cause for many people as far as chronic disease and many chronic symptoms.
One of the questions we get a lot, Peter, is what are the main causes that you see? I know it's quite at least in our clinic, we see all sorts of different triggers for it, but what are you commonly seeing as a big, major factors for triggering leaky gut?
That's a great question. First we have to know what causes it, because as I say, if leaky gut is transient, can come in and out, then what are the things that can cause it to kind of get stuck that way, so to speak, and doesn't, heal? And really there's a whole host of factors that can be causes for leaky gut. One of the main causes will be dietary contributions, right? Because in the standard American diet or the North American diet, we eat things that are processed, that are man-made, that are laced with chemicals, hidden sugars or straight out sugar, fried food, trans fat food. These processed food in general going to have a deleterious effect on our gut lining, specifically leading to leaky gut. So diet is a big factor. And, and it's also diet's a very touchy subject, right? Not everybody are ready or willing to change the diet. But if you're on a healing journey and you have some chronic condition, and you've tried everything else and you haven't changed your diet, this may be something that you want to consider, that it can cause problem. And research show that it definitely can cause problem. One of the things about food specifically is the topic of gluten. And gluten is a protein that's found in grains such as wheat, rye, barley, and other gluten-containing foods. And gluten is a known trigger for leaky gut. And so even in asymptomatic people, even if you have no symptoms per se, eating gluten can lead to leaky gut, which can predispose you to other symptoms that you may or may not feel necessarily at this time, but can develop into something down the line. For example, inflammation that can turn into arthritis or can lead to other autoimmune disease in other places of the body other than the digestive tract. So an important thing to note is that people don't want to think leaky gut is just confined to the gut. Anything could be further from the truth. I mean, nothing could be further from the truth. Leaky gut is a condition that doesn't just affect the gut itself. In fact, oftentimes it has extra intestinal manifestations, which means it affects other systems and organs and tissue in the body. So you might get joint pain, you might get brain fog, you might get hormonal issues and autoimmune disease of different types. So definitely do not think that leaky gut is just about gut symptoms. Now, back to triggers. What are some of the things that can cause leaky gut? We talked about diet, but certainly if you have gut dysbiosis, where you have an imbalance of the beneficial versus the harmful bacteria, or you get some food poisoning episode, you get, gastroenteritis, you get parasites, things that just go through you, that pathogen can be a cause for leaky gut as well. And finally, another thing that can cause leaky gut will be environmental toxins. Again, many of these toxins can be ingested through the process and chemical, laden foods that we eat, but also just things in the environment, such as, glyphosate and pesticides, such as just, plastic and fire retardant material. I mean, it's just so ubiquitous that we're basically surrounded by this toxic soup, that these chemicals all going to have an impact on our gut as well. So those are the big things I would look for: diet, toxins, infection. But I will go further to say that even blood sugar dysregulation, like if you have insulin resistance and diabetes, that's going to be a driver for leaky gut. If you have things like low thyroid function, that can be a driver for leaky gut, because when you have low thyroid, the metabolism of every single cell in your body slows down, including intestinal cells, so they can't regenerate themselves as well. That can lead to leaky gut. Even things like stress, if you have stress, that can also drive stress physiology, that can drive stress hormones, which are also going to have an impact on leaky gut. So those are the general categories of things that we look for when it comes to leaky gut. So it really comes down to really looking for the root cause of things.
Well, lots to unpack there, and thank you. Those are massive, massive nuggets. Now, I want to come back to one of the original buckets there that we were sort of starting to tap into, and that's of food. And gluten is obviously notorious and quite nefarious when it comes to a lot of digestive issues and beyond, including autoimmunity. But what are some other foods that are often triggers for leaky gut? Are you seeing any patterns in general? And also, a general question on top of that would be, how do we know if food is bugging us? Are you testing for these foods? Do you recommend people to get tested? Do you listen to your body in certain ways? What do you recommend, Peter?
Yeah, and there's no one size fits all approach. I think it all depends on where the person's coming from, how far are they willing to invest, into doing testing and so forth. But as far as other foods, I find that, again, gluten is a very common trigger. Dairy can be cross-reactive. So we know that gluten there are other food that can cross-react with gluten, meaning if you're sensitive to other foods such as, say, rice or quinoa, these foods can potentially cross-react. So if you are sensitive to rice, if you have that sensitivity, that potentially that rice sensitivity can cross-react with gluten and trigger a gluten reaction, even though you haven't ate gluten. So that's a concept of cross-reactivity. And dairy is known to do that. Soy, corn, rice, quinoa, there's a list of gluten cross-reactive foods. So we don't want to just think about just gluten. It's other food as well. But in general, if you're eating more processed food, then that's going to be more problematic just simply because the way the foods are processed. By the way, in the North America, in the United States in particular, gluten are often deamidated, and deamidation is a process where they use enzymes to make gluten more gluey and more malleable so they can shape the chicken nugget into the shape of like Mickey Mouse and stuff like that. That gluey enzyme that makes this gluten more malleable and formable, it makes the gluten much more reactive to the human body. So that's also another problem why we want to eat as much of the whole unprocessed food. And then I mentioned earlier blood sugar, and people think like food, but remember sugar is food as well. So if you're eating food that has a lot of, just straight up simple sugar or high fructose corn syrup, or just eating a lot of refined carbohydrate, right? Where they starch, but they just turn into simple sugar right away because they're just white starch. These things going to impact your insulin in a way that's going to promote insulin resistance. That's going to lead to high blood sugar. Not high blood sugar and insulin resistance going to create glycation, which is the damage caused by blood sugar. And that's very inflammatory for the gut. So I think people a lot of times just focus on, okay, I got to cut out this specific food, but don't forget about just sugar intake in general and minding the blood sugar stability. Lastly, I want to speak about food is some people are very sensitive to a group of compounds called lectins. Okay, not everybody is equal amount sensitive to lectins. Some people are very sensitive to all the different kinds of lectin, and some people are not. But in people who are sensitive to lectins, lectin can be a trigger for leaky gut. Now, lectin can be found in almost all plants. So it's not like you can cut out all lectins. One way to cut out all lectin will be to just eat all meat. And some people actually do that. It's called a carnivore diet, where they just eat only meat, and they'll actually feel better if they actually have problem with just lectins in general. Now, that's very extreme. I'm not saying everybody should do that, but I'm just pointing out that lectin can be a problem. So then that kind of leads into your next question is, how do we test for these things? How do we know? Well, there's two ways to know. You can either do an elimination diet and just cut out these things and see how you feel. If you cut out these things and you feel better, then that means those things may be potentially a problem. And then you see how you do, and then gradually you can introduce it back and see how you do. So that's a process that you can do this yourself. The other way to do it is just by running food sensitivity testing. Now, one of the interesting things that I found clinically, John, is that if people have very profound leaky gut and they're very sensitive, to everything in the environment because they have leaky gut. And that's one of the things about leaky gut is that it can promote just this overzealousness of your immune system. Then they may be finding themselves sensitive to a whole host of foods. And if we do food sensitivity tests on someone like that, you might see that they're sensitive to every food. So then what do we do then? Cut out every food? Well, that's not a solution to the problem because you got to eat, right? So sometimes I don't do the food sensitivity test right up front. I'd rather do a leaky gut test to identify whether this person has leaky gut and how severe it is, and then go ahead and fix that. And if they still have problem, then I might follow up with a food sensitivity test to see what still remains. So that's a clinical strategy that I employ to not waste time and money doing the test that might just show that this person's sensitive to everything. And I ended up stressing the person out because now they can't eat anything because they got to follow the test because they may have problem with all those foods, not because of the food themselves, but because they have a leaky gut condition that's not healed yet.
Hope you got tons of nuggets from this video. This is just part 1 of a 3-part series on leaky gut. Now, if you have not subscribed to my channel yet, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you get notified when I release new content. Please like this video if you learned something new or you already know some of the stuff, but this video helped you to know it better. Please let me know in the comments what you took away from this video. It's time to be the master of your health. God bless you and see you in the next video.